Hi, I'm Colleen, and this is my March TBR. So, my February TBR was all about mood reading, and I actually kind of enjoyed doing that. I'm not going to entirely mood read this month because I do have some stuff that I need to get read, but I am going to probably towards the end of the month shift a little that way too. So this list is going to have more books on it than I could possibly read in 1 month. The first thing that I will definitely read / listen to in March is that's upside down. Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. I am doing a Year of the Bard and trying to read a bunch of Shakespeare plays this year. I'll have a link in my description of the video where I talk about which ones I'm going to read. But in March, I want to read Julius Caesar. It's the only major tragedy that I've never read, which is surprising. I didn't read it in high school, and I never read it in college, which is even more surprising since I majored in English literature and took an entire class on Shakespeare. So I'm going to read it this year. I had a wonderful experience in January reading and listening to The Winter's Tale, so I am hoping to repeat that with Julius Caesar. I will be using BBC's Shakespeare sessions as my audio version and then also reading along, which is how I like to consume Shakespeare. So this one I will definitely read in March, no matter what my mood is. Next, I have a few books that were on my February maybe gonna read that I didn't read, so I'm putting them on my March one. And the first is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm going to tell you why I didn't read this in February, and it's not the reason that I originally thought. I had talked about maybe saving this for the summer because I really like reading books that I think are going to be favorites in the summer. And the real reason is that in February I read The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd, and I'll talk about it in my wrap-up, but that book emotionally destroyed me, and I didn't think it was a good idea to, jump right into The Song of Achilles, which I know will emotionally destroy me right away. I needed a couple weeks off to let my heart heal before I destroy it again. The next book that was on my February maybe, and I didn't read, is Song of Flight by Juliette Marillier. I'm still sort of wondering whether or not I'm going to read this in March, and that is because Juliette Marillier did a Ask Me Anything on Reddit, which I'm not on Reddit, but one of my good friends is, so she asked a question for me that wasn't related to this. But I read through all the answers, and she doesn't currently have a contract for any of her next books. So whenever that happens, I get really worried that this is going to be her last book, which I don't want to happen. So I don't know if I'm going to read this in March or if I'm going to wait. I did read the first chapter, which is only 4 pages long, just to give myself a taste, and it's really good, and I don't know what to do. Should I read it, or should I wait until she has a contract for a new book? Let me know what you think in the comments. Next, I have a book that was not on my February TBR. I bought it in February. It was recommended in my romance book group, which it's not a romance at all, but it is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Octavia E. Butler wrote Kindred. It's probably her most famous, and I really liked Kindred when I read it. And someone was talking about how this is basically almost prophetic of what ended up happening in the 2020s. So I feel like I need to read it. Her writing is really cool. So this takes place now, but has a sci-fi feeling, I guess. I want to know when she wrote it. So she published it in 1993. So it was, pretty far into the future, 2020 in 1993. I mean, I was a child in 1993. And I know it's dark. It's a duology, I believe. There's a second book, and I'm excited to read it. It'll probably be a little upsetting, but it's fun to read upsetting books sometimes. Next, because I am trying to read more classics this year, I'm hoping to read Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. I haven't gotten that from the library yet, so there's a beautiful picture of it. I have really wanted to read this book for a long time. It's very academia feeling. It's classes, different people in different classes. I know that there's sort of a through of a love story, and I thought March might be a fun time to read it. From reading the description, it has sort of a spring feel to me. We'll see if it actually feels that way when I'm reading the book, but I'm very excited for spring, so bring on all the spring vibes. Next, I have a lot of arcs right now I have to get through, so I'm going to sort of try to read one a month, maybe more. But one I'm definitely going to try to get to in March is In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power, who wrote Wilder Girls, which I did not read. But I read the first chapter of this arc one night when I couldn't fall asleep, and then decided that this is not the right kind of book to read when you can't fall asleep, because there's a lot of information coming in and a lot of world building. So I figured I wasn't going to read that while I was having insomnia. And it has kind of like a Greek feel, like a ancient Greek mythology feel, but in a fantasy setting. It's about a pair of twins and sort of the power they hold in their culture. Looking forward to it. I'll let you know what I think. Next, I have Intimations by Zadie Smith. Now, I went to our local bookstore I volunteered to buy a book for my twins' preschool for like their Valentine's Day party. And I went in like, I'm only going to buy a book for the preschool party. I'm not going to buy anything else. But I did let myself look around. So I looked around for like 15 minutes and I was like, oh, okay, I'm having fun. I'm not feeling like I have to buy anything. And then when I went to check out, this book was right next to the register and I had wanted to read it. And I was just like, oh, it's not that expensive. It was like $11. So I bought it and I'm going to read it in March. It's a collection of essays that Zadie Smith wrote during the beginning of lockdown. And I think it'll be pretty interesting. It'll also be a really fast read because it's under 100 pages. Next, I've really been craving some poetry. And I got this book of poems a long time ago, French Love Poems. I think I got it, 2 or 3 years ago. And I read a couple of them when I first bought it and then put it on my shelf. And I think I'm going to read the rest of them this March. It's obviously lots of different authors. It's one of those books that I really like, this setup where they've got the French on one side and the English on the other. And since I do know a smattering of French, it'll be fun to glance at some words I used to know the definitions of. Okay. In February, I did not read On the Way to the Wedding, which is it's by Julia Quinn. It's the last book in the Bridgerton series. And I'm going to read it in March because I don't have any other romance on my list. And I usually like to read at least one romance a month. So I will read that one in March. And it'll get me nice and excited for Bridgerton coming out at the end of March. And then I also want to read something out of this. So my husband's aunt, who I have a great relationship with and really like, gave me this book when my twins were little babies. And obviously, I didn't get to it yet. And I am not saying I'm going to read this over 1,000-page book in March. It's a collection of Irish fiction. So there's lots of different stuff in here. She always buys me used books, and this one has like a really long message to someone named Jonas in 2002, who apparently Jonas didn't feel the need to keep this book forever, but it looks like Jonas read it because it's got a little rip in it. But there are so many different short stories in here. There's Jonathan Swift. Let's see, who else do I recognize? Anthony Trollope, Bram Stoker, Oscar Wilde, James Joyce, Samuel Beckett, Emma Donoghue. Ooh, I just read a book by Emma Donoghue and I really liked it. So maybe I'll read that one. It's the last one. It's called Going Back. But I'll pick one of the books in here. And I think they're all pretty short, or they're excerpts, because there's like excerpts of Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake in here. And, Portraits of an Artist as a Young Man. I love that book. So I'll pick one thing out of here and read it. Count it as a full book. And lastly, I will read whatever I get from Book of the Month, which the list isn't out yet, which always happens because I don't like to film my TBR once the month has started. And obviously it takes me a little while to edit these. So very rarely do I get my Book of the Month list before I film my TBR. So I'll read that one too. I was thinking about what I'm going to pick. And I think I might pick either a thriller or a historical fiction, depending on what's offered. Those are usually offered. I've got a lot of fantasy / sci-fi for this month, so I probably won't pick a fantasy or sci-fi. Hi, this is me editing, and Book of the Month released their list, so I can tell you what I'm going to read via Book of the Month in March. And the answer is I ordered 3 books, so probably not all of them, but they had 7 choices this month, and then they also had some new add-ons, and a lot of them looked really good. So I went with The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, which I knew I was going to go with because that was like, they always do like a teaser, and that was their teaser one, and I really wanted to read that, so I knew I was going to get it. I also got The Cartographers by
Pang Shepherd, which I told myself I wasn't going to read any fantasy or buy any fantasy, but I really wanted to read this one. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, I can get it in hardcover for such a good price. So I did get it. And then lastly, I picked an add-on, which is The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh. It looks kind of like it's contemporary fiction, but it has like some sort of like domestic thriller vibes going on with a man finding out his wife is not who he thought she was. So I'm very excited for all of them, and I'll probably read 1 or 2 of them also in March.
So that's my March TBR, and I'm excited. I always get excited when I do my TBR. I'm actually really excited to listen to Julius Caesar because I loved The Winter's Tale so much. I can't wait. I'll probably do that the first week in March. Just get it going. And I'm enjoying Shakespeare so much. It's been so fun. So hopefully I feel the same way about Julius Caesar as I do. I really like Shakespeare's tragedies, so I think I will. I hope you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.